Let's start by setting up the basic structure of our HTML document. We begin with the doctype declaration, which tells the browser that we're using HTML5.
Next, we define the opening and closing HTML tags with the lang attribute set to N for English. Inside the HTML tags, we need to define the head section, which will contain metadata and links to external resources like style sheets. Here, the meta char set equals UTF-8 tag ensures that our document is encoded in UTF-8, which supports a wide range of characters. The meta name equals viewport content equals width equals device width. Initial scale equals 1.0 tag is crucial for responsive design, ensuring our app looks good on all devices. The title tag sets the title of the web page, which appears in the browser tab. Finally, the link rel equals stylesheet ref equals styles.css tag links to our external CSS file where we'll define our styles.
Now let's move on to the body of our document. We'll start by creating a container dev that will hold all the elements of our job tracker application.
Within our container, the first thing we'll add is an H1 tag for the main heading of our app. This will simply say, Job Tracker Application. Next, we need to create the login and registration forms. These forms will allow users to sign in or register to use the app. Let's start with the login form. This dev has the ID off, and it contains a subheading H2 for the login type. Then we have two input fields, one for the username and one for the password, both with corresponding placeholders. The login button with the ID login button will trigger the login functionality when clicked. Lastly, there's a paragraph with a button inside it that will allow users to switch to the registration button. And is initially hidden using inline CSS with display none. This form has input fields for username and password, a register button with the ID register button, and a toggle button to switch back to the login form. Once a user logs in, they'll be redirected to the Job Tracker dashboard. Let's create that section next. This section is also initially hidden with display none. It includes a personalized welcome message with the user's name displayed inside a span with the ID user. Below that, we have input fields for adding a new job application, company name, job title, and application date. The select element with ID job status allows users to choose the current status of the job. There's also a text area for notes, followed by an Add Job button to submit the application. Finally, there's a div with ID job list where all the jobs will be listed, and a logout button to sign out. Finally, let's add a modal that will allow users to update the status of their job applications. This modal is hidden by default and is designed to pop up when a user wants to update the status of a job application. The modal structure includes a close button, a heading, a select drop-down to choose the new status, and an update status button to confirm the change. That's it for the HTML structure of our job tracker application. We've covered setting up the login and registration forms, creating the dashboard where jobs will be managed, and adding a modal for updating job statuses. In the next steps, we'll dive into the JavaScript to make these elements interactive and bring our app to life. In the previous session, we set up the HTML structure for our job tracker application. Now, it's time to make our app interactive using JavaScript. We'll be adding functionality for logging in, registering, managing job applications, and more. So let's dive right in.
We'll start by setting up event listeners for the different buttons in our application. These will allow us to trigger specific functions when buttons are clicked.
Next, let's define the functions showRegisterForm and showLoginForm. These will handle toggling between the login and registration forms. In the showRegisterForm function, we hide the login form by setting its display style to none and show the registration form by setting its display to block. The showLoginForm function does the reverse. This way, the user can easily switch between forms without leaving the page. Now let's move on to the login function, which will handle user authentication. In this login function, we first retrieve the username and password entered by the user. We then access the user's object stored in local storage. If the username exists and the password matches, we store the current user in local storage under the key current user and call the showJobTracker function to display the job tracking dashboard. If the credentials are incorrect, we show an alert. Let's now create the register function, which allows new users to sign up. The register function starts by getting the username and password entered in the registration form. We check if the username already exists in the user's object stored in local storage. If it doesn't, we create a new user entry with an empty array for jobs and store it back in local storage. If registration is successful, we prompt the user to log in and call showLoginForm to display the login form. If the username is already taken, we show an alert. Next, let's define the showJobTracker function, which will display the job tracker dashboard after a successful login. The showJobTracker function hides both the login and registration forms and displays the job tracker dev, which is our main dashboard. We also call the loadJobs function here to load any jobs the user has already added. Now, let's create the addJob function that will handle adding new job applications. In the addJob function, we first collect the input values for the job application, company name, job title, application date, job status, and notes. We create a job object containing these details. Then, we retrieve the current user and add the new job to their jobs array in local storage. After updating local storage, we call loadJobs to refresh the job list on the dashboard. Finally, we clear the input fields so the user can add a new job. Let's now define the loadJobs function, which will load and display the user's job applications. The loadJobs function starts by getting the current user and their jobs from local storage. We clear the current content of the job list dev, and then loop through each job in the user's jobs array. For each job, we create a dev element, populate it with the job's details, and append it to the job list. We've also added buttons to update the job status and delete the job, which we'll define next. Let's now implement the functionality to update the status of a job and delete a job. In the showUpdateStatus modal function, we start by selecting the modal element by its ID and setting its display style to block, making it visible on the screen. We then dynamically set the on-click event of the update button within the modal, so when the user clicks Update, it triggers the Update Job Status function, passing the index of the job that needs to be updated. Next, let's implement the Update Job Status function to handle the actual status update. In this function, we start by retrieving the new status selected by the user. Then, we get the current user and all user data from local storage. We update the job status for the job at the given index in the jobs array for the current user. If a new status is selected, we save the updated user data back to local storage and refresh the job list on the dashboard by calling loadJobs. Finally, we close the modal by calling the closeModal function. Now we'll create a simple function to close the modal. The closeModal function selects the modal by its ID and sets its display style to none, effectively hiding it. This function will be called whenever we want to close the modal, whether after updating a job status or when the user clicks outside of the modal. Next, let's implement the delete job function, which allows users to remove a job application from their list. In the delete job function, we get the current user and all user data from local storage. We use the splice method to remove the job at the specified index from the user's jobs array. After updating local storage with the modified jobs array, we refresh the job list by calling load jobs. This makes sure the deleted job is removed from the UI as well.
Let's also implement a logout function so users can securely log out of the application.
The logout function clears the current user from local storage to log the user out. We then hide the job tracker section by setting its display style to none, and bring back the authentication section by setting its display style to block. This redirects the user back to the login screen. To streamline the demonstration, let's add an auto login feature that checks if there's a logged-in user. To streamline the demonstration, let's add an auto login feature that checks if there's a logged-in user. Here, we're simply checking if there's a current user stored in local storage. If there is, we automatically call show job tracker, bypassing the login screen. This is especially useful during development. Let's start by setting up some basic styling for our job tracker application. We'll begin with importing fonts and icons, and then setting up the overall layout. Here, we import the Roboto font from Google Fonts, which gives our app a clean, modern look. We're also importing Font Awesome for easy access to a wide range of icons, though we don't use them in this specific project. Next, we set the global styles for the body. We apply the Roboto font to the entire document and set a subtle gradient background that transitions from a light blue-gray to a soft white, creating a calm and professional atmosphere. The display is set to flex with justify content and align items centered, ensuring our content is perfectly centered on the page. Finally, we set a default text color of number 333 and remove any default margin. Now, let's move on to styling the main container that holds our content.
The .container class is the central element of our application. We give it a white background, soft rounded corners with a border radius of 12 px, and a subtle shadow to make it stand out against the background. The padding inside the container is set to 30 pixels, ensuring enough space around the content. We also limit the container's maximum width to 600 pixels while allowing it to be responsive with width 100%. For the headings, we set both H1 and H2 elements to have a margin bottom of 20 pixels, creating space between the headings and the content that follows. We give the H1 a bolder font weight and keep the color at number 333 for strong visibility, while H2 has a slightly lighter color, number 555, to differentiate it. Next, we'll style the input fields, buttons, and the job list to ensure they look cohesive and user-friendly. Here, we style the input, select, and text area elements. We set their width to 100%, making sure they fill the container's width. The padding and margin create space inside and around the elements, while a light gray border, #CCC, and rounded corners make them visually appealing. Additionally, we've added a transition to change the border color to blue when the element is focused, improving the user experience.
Buttons are styled with a blue background and white text to stand out against the rest of the interface. We remove the default border, add padding for a comfortable click area, and round the corners slightly for a modern look. A transition effect is applied to the background color so that it darkens when the user hovers over the button, providing visual feedback. The job list items are contained within a div. We style each div with a light border, some padding, and a light gray background. Hashtag F9 F9 F9. The rounded corners and margin between items help visually separate each job entry, making the list easy to scan.
Lastly, let's style the modal window that appears when updating the job status.
The .modal class is initially hidden. Display none. It covers the entire viewport with a fixed position, ensuring it stays in place even when the page scrolls. The z-index of 1 places it on top of all other elements, and the semi-transparent black background, RABA 0, 0, 0, 0.4, adds emphasis to the modal content by dimming the rest of the screen. The .modal content class styles the content inside the modal. We set a white background, center it with margin, 15% auto, and add padding for space inside. The border and rounded corners match the rest of our design, and the modal is constrained to a maximum width of 400 pixels to keep it manageable on smaller screens.
The .close class styles the close button inside the modal. We position it on the right with a slightly muted color, hashtag AAA, increasing to black when hovered or focused for a clear interactive effect. This provides users with a clear way to close the modal if they decide not to update the job status.
Finally, let's add a bit of animation to make the application feel more dynamic. To enhance the user experience, we define a simple fade-in animation that gradually increases the opacity from 0 to 1. We apply this animation to both the dot container and dot modal content classes. So when the user opens the app or the modal, they see a smooth fade-in effect. And that's it for the CSS. We've now fully styled our job tracker application, giving it a clean, modern look that's both functional and visually appealing.